Hey friends, we are coming at you from this beautiful day in Blacksburg in the middle of this quarantine season to give you a little recap about one of our mission trips that these two lovely ladies and some other amazing people went on. I have Jenna and Emma here. This is Jenna and this is Emma, in case you weren't aware. But we're going to hear a little bit about their trip to Atlanta, some of the things they learned and what God did. So, just to get us started, Emma, tell us a little bit about what this trip was. What did you guys do? Some of those basics.
Yeah, so this trip was mainly 75% learning and then 25% serving. And the learning aspects included visiting a Hindu temple, having several information sessions. So we learned about church planting in Atlanta. We learned about what it looks like to be a refugee, and we got to get inside the headspace of a refugee. And then also we did some cross-cultural simulations, so what it looks like stepping into another culture and seeing how our own culture impacts us.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear more about this trip. So Jenna, tell me about why did you go on this trip in the first place?
Yeah, so 3 of us on the team, Kendall, Emma, and I, had all gone to Vienna last May. And there we worked with refugees, so I was kind of curious about what it looked like to work with refugees in our own culture. And it's like the Lord bringing all these cultures to one specific place in America instead of us leaving our cultural context and going to another place to learn about refugees.
That is true. Very different. So speaking of that, I want to hear a little bit about that from both of you. So you both went on this trip where you went all the way to Vienna, Austria, and then you also went to Clarkston in Georgia. And I just want to hear you guys, just some thoughts. Maybe we'll start with Emma, of just what are some of the things that were similar in your experience working with refugees in another country versus our own country, and maybe what are some things that were different?
So the church here, Gen Send, is the organization we work with. Clarkston has a lot more of a diverse population, so there were people from all over the world in Clarkston, so the church here was a lot more geared towards just celebrating that diversity and bringing all those cultures together. But then the church in Vienna was specifically geared towards Middle Eastern people, so they had a Farsi speaking service. So it was really cool just to contrast how the European church in Vienna is specifically loving the Farsi people, and then the church in Clarkston is specifically loving all kinds of people.
That is really interesting. I never really thought about that connection. What about you, Jenna? What stood out to you as some similarities and differences?
Yeah, I think when we went to Vienna, I felt like I was more just in the learning mindset, and I couldn't really do much because there was a language barrier because I speak German in Vienna, Austria, whereas in Clarkston, Atlanta, we were in the cultural context of America. So I could at least speak English to a lot of the refugees who had been learning that, hearing about their stories. And I understood the culture that I was in, where in Vienna, there was almost 3 cultures that were existing. There was my culture, the American culture, then the Viennese culture, and then Middle Eastern / Syrian culture over there. So it was a lot harder to get to interact with refugees and learn from them outside of my own culture.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. Just you are also a displaced person in Vienna. And yeah, seeing that difference, whereas we are the culture that is America. That definitely changes how we relate to refugees as well, for sure. Another thing I just really want to hear from both of you guys, we'll start with Emma again, is just how did you see God on this trip, and what were some of your biggest takeaways? What did you learn from going to Clarkston?
The biggest way I saw God was in the church leader's heart for God and for the gospel. So one of the pastors there, Samuel Rye, said this over and over on the trip. He said, "You're not a slave to your feelings or your personality," and that really hit me hard. And he was saying this in the terms of sharing the gospel. So their passion for the gospel is incredible, and just saying you're not a slave to your feelings or personality is just incredible, because that is just emphasizing how you need to be able to step outside of your comfort zone to be able to love people well, but also just not feel awkward when you're having conversations about faith. You just need to step into that and be able to love people well and to share the gospel well.
Wow. Yeah, that really hits me also as a fellow Enneagram 4.
Yeah.
We're some intense personalities in this particular space. What about you, Jenna?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways was like living life missionally. A lot of times I think we only think that you can live life missionally by going to another country or being specifically placed in an area in the United States. There has to be this formal programming around it. But that's just like not true. We can like live missionally by loving our neighbors. And a lot of times that's going to be someone who's different from us, whether they're different political affiliation or sexuality or gender or culture or race. And what does it look like just to love them and just share the gospel with them? Like, we don't have to change them or judge them or save them. Like, only Jesus has to do that. And I think that's a super freeing thing. Yeah, so just loving your neighbor well, like Jesus would.
That's good. Just kind of like in this whole thing, I think refugees are some people that we have a hard time like really feeling like in Blacksburg, Virginia, like what can we really do to love them? And so I'm just curious, as people who have been on a mission trip with two different places, like what are some ways that we as college students or just we in the town of Blacksburg, how can we love refugees?
Yeah, so I think it first starts with knowledge and like wanting to know more about refugees, because that enables you to be an advocate and to love others well. So there are a couple ways that I've learned. Like, first of all, is to go on a trip, like going to Clarkston or Vienna, like we've done, and just learn about refugees. But that's harder to practically serve long term in that way. So just first of all, knowledge, and then like just looking for the agencies around us. I know there's an agency in Blacksburg that works with refugees, and I know in every big city they will have something. So looking for those agencies, and if you're not able to give your time, look for giving resources and different things. So there are ways to practically love refugees.
So speaking of refugee, maybe it would be helpful also for everyone to just know what is the definition of a refugee. Either one of you can answer this question, so that maybe we can be more aware of who they are.
Yeah, I have it written down so I can read it. A refugee is someone who is forcefully displaced because of persecution, fear of persecution, or who's unable or unwilling to return to their home country.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, ladies, I'm really thankful for you guys taking the time out of your beautiful day in Blacksburg to share just some thoughts from your mission trip. And this trip is going to happen again. We already do know that. It's already confirmed. So if you're considering going on this trip, talk to one of these ladies. There's also some other really incredible people who went on this trip that have a lot of great things to say. So there you go. Thank you.